2. Several years later, when we were again lined against the wharf at Boston, a big, tall man was seen coming down the wharf. "Stormy, or I'm a fool," says I to myself. The big man came over the side, and sure enough, it was Alfred Bulltop Stormalong. There was a change immediately apparent. He was taller than ever, but the fresh hung of dewlaps all over him, and the eyes showed the marks of great suffering. Too, he looked hungrily at the sea. He breathed deep breaths of the salt air, and in a few minutes seemed to regain some of his old spirit. "Stormy, where you been?" I asked him. "Farming," says he. "How'd you like it?" I goes on. "Terrible," says he. "Nothing but green grass and trees and hills and hot work. An area breeze with the smell of the sea. Never a storm to make a man pull out the best that's in him. Nothing but zephyrs and a hot sun a pushing on the plow. All my muscles were made for pulling. On the farm was nothing to do but push. Sailoring's the best job after all." He signed on for his old job as boatswain, and after taking on water, we got under way. We cruised about the Caribbean Sea, taking on and discharging shipments for over 6 months. Then we made for Boston Harbor. Stormy was a loyal sailor until he saw a bigger ship, and the Lady of the Sea was the biggest ship sailing the Atlantic. At least we thought she was before we got the Bergamite, who we came across in the first appeared to be a mirage. She was just the biggest ship ever built, and heard the skipper say to the mate that she was Donald McKay's dream come to life. Her lines were perfect, her cloth pure white and hung on silver masts. She rolled lazily on the sea that made us bump about like a cork. I saw Stormy at the rail, gazing in goggle-eyed admiration. "Must make 1,000,000 ordinary sailors to man her," he gasped. "Yes, sir, 1,000,000 at the best. Well, I guess I'll be leaving this packet." Next morning we were without a bosun. The best explanation we could give was that during the night he had gone over the side and swum to the big ship. For a second time, Stormalong had gone out of my life. After the Lady of the Sea discharged her cargo in Boston, we got word that they were signing on a crew for a new ship, the Courser. I applied for a place as second mate and was signed on. We were told to report the ship at the end of the wharf, and that was acting as a tender for the courier, which was too big to enter Boston Harbor. Next morning we boarded the tender and were taken out to the Courser. She was none other than the big ship we had seen from the Lady of the Sea, the ship that Stormy had gone over the side for. She looked like a ship that might have been a race for men of Stormalong's stature. The first thing that caught my eye as my feet hit the deck was a stable full of horses. "Horse boats, huh?" I said. "Horse boat nothing," said the man in charge of the tender. "Those horses are for the men on watch." Believe it or not, the ship was so big that all officers and men on watch were mounted on horses. Man alive, her rigging was so immense that no living man could take her in a single glance. Her masts penetrated the clouds, and the top sections were on the hinges so they would be bent over and let the sun and the moon pass. Her sails were so big that the boulders it had taken able-bodied sailmakers out of the Sahara Desert to find room to sew them. The young men who were sent aloft usually came back as graybeards. The skipper had to order all hands aloft 6 days before a storm. Every yard and every block and tackle had bunkhouses and cook's galleys built into them to accommodate the men who worked aloft. She carried over 600 men, and some of the sailor men never saw all the shipmates. Once the old man, who gave his orders through the megaphone, ordered all hands forward. It took after a crew week to get there, and then over 30 were killed in the crush. Some of the men got lost because they had taken the precaution to bring their compasses with them. The Courser was so big that she had to keep to the oceans. There was no harbor big enough for her to turn in and about. Her wheel was so big that it took 32 men working in unison to turn her, and early in the cruise it was found that Stormalong was the only man aboard who could make her answer the wheel promptly. When we had to take on or discard cargo, a whole fleet of ordinary ships used to come out and we would transfer it our ship. But she was just a great ship. There never was a storm great enough to cause her any real discomfort. There was one that caused us a bit of worry, one of those September gales that chivy us in the North Atlantic. She was so big that the skipper just let her ride out any storm, knowing that no matter how big a blow it was, the courser could weather it. Well, this was some storm, and we bobbed about like a regular-sized vessel over all that ocean. Worst of it was that the clouds and fog made it so dark we couldn't make where we were at. This went on for over a fortnight, when we awoke to see the sun bright and shining. The bosun put his mouth in the megaphone and shouted, "Rise and shine for the Black Ball Line!" And all hands turned in. There was Stormalong at the wheel, holding her true for what he thought was her course. After the captain and all the mates had taken sun, and figured out the paper that told us we were somewhere in the North Sea and headed south. That meant trouble. The courser could never get through the English Channel, and it was meant that we'd pile up against the cliffs of Dover on the French coast. You see, the North Sea wasn't big enough for us to turn around in. The skipper and the mates had a consultation and decided that they could not turn her around to take a chance of easing through the channel. The officers rode across the poop of that ship on their horses, yelling orders and squinting their eyes along the ship's sides. Stormy was at the wheel, the only man who could see everything at once. Just as they got to the point between Calais and the cliffs of Dover, all sails were reefed and the skipper was ready to order the men to take to the boats. He looked back at Stormy and saw that the man on the wheel was calm and steady. "Will she make it?" yelled the skipper through his microphone. "I think so," answered the man at the wheel. "May scrape a bit of paint off our sides, but she'll go through." Then, squinting first along the port side and then the starboard, he called a man to the poop deck. "Better send all hands over side and soap the sides. Put an extra heavy coat on the starboard." The skipper got the whole crew plastering the sides with the best soap he had, and the big ship eased through as sweet as honey. But it's all due to the scrap that we did get through. It was such a tight fit that the cliffs of Dover scraped every bit of soap off the starboard side. Ever since then, the cliffs of that point were pure white. That was the courser's soap and the action of the waves. Sometimes when you are in the channel and take a look at the waves, they are still a bit foamy from the soap. When the old man saw that we'd gotten through, he called all hands forward to splash the main brace, which meant in nautical terms to come and have a drink of grog. The courser kept right on going, but every few hours we got into shallow water and had to jettison all our ballast. We threw so much overboard that you can still see the piles of dirt. The English call them the Channel Islands. And all the time we knew her, the courser had but one storm that troubled her. Strange to relate, but as another September gale, one of those lads that generally does so much damage around Florida, the courser came down along the Caribbees and the storm whipped about her pretty badly. The skipper wasn't as much afraid of losing his ship as he was of hitting one of the islands and knocking it and the inhabitants into Kingdom Come. The ship just missed Haiti and headed west and south like a bronco with a bit in his teeth. Right down the Gulf she went until she came to Darien, and without asking anybody's permission, went right through the Isthmus. The courser found herself out in the Pacific Ocean, with only one eyewitness of the destruction outside the crew was a couple of army officers who had been sent down to the United States to make surveys for some canal. And right in front of their eyes, the ship comes along and digs it for them. Naturally, they took all the credit, but the truth is old Stormalong and the courser dug that ditch. The older skipper in Cape Cod paused his narrative and yawned, and gave his cronies a chance. "All I ever knowed about him," said another, "was that he took the whale soup out of Cape Cod dory, and his favorite meat was shark. He liked ostrich eggs for breakfast, and then he would lie back on the deck and pick his teeth with the 18-foot oar." "Skippers came and skippers went," said the older skipper on Cape Cod, "but Stormy struck in the course with the end. He died where they were discharging the cargo in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. I know how he was buried, and the sailor who had swallowed the anchor. And they took him ashore and buried him right near the water so that he could always have the salt spray on it." Then he burst into song. "Stormy's gone, that good old man," and the rest joined them in the chorus, like, "To my way, hey, Stormalong John. Storm's gone, that good old man. To way, hey, Stormalong John. They dug his grave with a silver spade. To my way, hey, Stormalong John. A shroud of finest silk was made. To hey, Stormalong John." They lowered him with the silver chain to my way, hey, Stormalong John. Their eyes all dim and more than rain. To my Stormalong John. An able sailor, bold and true, my way, hey, Stormalong John. A good old bosun to his crew. To my Stormalong. He's moored at last and has furled his sail. To my way, hey, Stormalong John. No danger now from wreck or gale. To my Mrs. Stormalong. I wish I was old Stormy's son. To my way, hey, Stormalong John. I'd build me a ship 1,000 ton. To my way, Mr. Stormalong. I'd sail the wide world round and round. To my way, hey, Stormalong John. With plenty of money I would be found. To my Mr. Stormalong. I'd fill her with New England rum. To my way, hey, Stormalong John. At all my showbacks they would have some. To my Mr. Stormalong. Old Stormy's dead and gone to rest. To my way, hey, Stormalong John. Of all the sailors, he was the best. To my Mr. Stormalong. The song ended, and the old showbacks tossed wistfully across the harbor. Beyond the harbor entrance, a steamship was making her smoky way to Monmouth's Light. The sailor who had swallowed the anchor spat into the water and said, "When I went to sea, they had iron men and wooden ships. Now they've got iron ships and wooden men. I'd rather be found dead than found on one of them steamboats."